Not long after Stalin rose to power in the late 1920s, all discussion of Russia's last imperial family, either printed or in public, was banned. Any nostalgia for or veneration of the Romanovs went underground. But people did not stop believing or praying to their murdered Tsar. They simply did it in private. This situation prevailed for 60 years or more until the collapse of the Soviet Union in December 1991. The minute the old oppressive order was gone, the Russian Orthodox Church slowly began to re-emerge. With it came the veneration of the Romanov family, seen as very much the totemic heart of their faith for many Russians. Indeed, nostalgia for them among the enduringly Orthodox faithful had never, ever really gone away. Such indeed was growing official Soviet concern about the continuing quiet but persistent veneration of the Romanovs that by the 1970s radical measures were taken to try and suppress it. The Ipatiev house in Ekaterinburg, where the family had been held under close guard from the end of April 1918 until their murder there in the early hours of 17th July that year, had for a period of time been taken over as the Ural Museum of Revolution. The Soviets promoted it as a revolutionary monument testifying to the destruction of the old and hated imperial order by the revolution. But all attempts to turn a house in which 11 people, the Romanovs, their doctor, and 3 servants, had been brutally massacred by the state, into some kind of paean to the new order, failed dismally. Instead, the Ipatiev house became the opposite, the repository of nostalgia for a part of Russian history that had been destroyed. Extraordinarily, the last home of the Romanovs became a place of enormous significance. From the early 70s, no matter the considerable difficulty, pilgrims and believers made their way to Ekaterinburg covertly every July in order to pay their respects to the murdered family. The Soviet government moved swiftly to defuse the problem. Approaching the 60th anniversary in 1978, the Politburo decided to remove this irritant. Orders were sent down from Yuri Andropov to local Ekaterinburg party leader, one Boris Yeltsin, to organize the swift demolition of the house. This was done in a couple of days in September 1977, but it was, as Yeltsin himself later admitted, an act of barbarism. The destruction of the Ipatiev house made not a jot of difference. People kept on coming to the bare tarmac site, which continued to serve as a place of pilgrimage, prayer and remembrance. A simple wooden Russian Orthodox cross was erected over the wasteland where the house had once stood, only to be quickly removed by the local authorities. But sooner or later, another one always was put in its place. After the fall of communism in 1991, plans were put in place to erect a grand new cathedral on the site of the house. By 2000, work began on what is now Ekaterinburg's Church on the Blood. It was consecrated in 2003 and is now a major pilgrimage site and has rapidly become the focal point of an enormous worldwide growth of interest in the Romanov family. Since 2000, the significance of the Church on the Blood to the Russian Orthodox faithful has snowballed, with a massive influx of pilgrims every July for what is called the Tsar's Days, a 3-day period of commemoration, veneration, prayer and religious procession in and around the city. At the end of a long vigil held at the Church on the Blood on the night of 16th July, the congregation then walk en masse the 12 miles to the Koptyaki forest outside Ekaterinburg. Here they gather at what is now the Monastery of the Holy Russian Passion Bearers, a site comprised of several small churches, one for each member of the family, to pay their respects to the Romanovs. Every year, more and more people arrive in Ekaterinburg for the Tsar's days. Indeed, the numbers are increasing at an alarming rate. The first few pilgrimages out to the forest were comprised of only a few thousand people. In 2017, they estimated as many as 60,000 made their way to the city for the commemoration. This year will see an unprecedented increase in numbers for the 100th anniversary. This anniversary will undoubtedly be the biggest public demonstration yet of the growing and irresistible significance of the Russian imperial family in the cultural, spiritual, and emotional life of modern-day Russia. To many Russians, the revolution of 1917 was a sin, a stain on their history. It is perhaps why last year's commemoration in Russia itself was very low-key. It is not 1917, but 1918 that, for many ordinary Russians, is the significant date in their history. For it will bring them a much sought-after opportunity for repentance, forgiveness, reconciliation, a chance to atone for what they perceive as the sins of their revolutionary forebears. After a century of an enduring sense of pain and loss and guilt, for those gathering in Ekaterinburg this July, it will be an extraordinary and longed-for chance to finally accept that the family all died on 17th July 1918.